Would it make you really sad if you lost a buyer and then found out later that you could have had more than one buyer on the hook at the same time? Would you be disappointed? Would you feel like you made the wrong decision, or maybe in some cases actually got some bad advice? Lawrence in Doraville wrote in saying, it seems that today's market is different from a few years ago. Not as many multiple offer situations. We are under contract, but we are wondering if it's a good idea to have a backup offer in place too. Our agent says no. What are your thoughts? And I'm going to answer this question with one answer, and it is unequivocally yes. It is always worth having a backup offer in place. Now, a little dirty secret is sometimes real estate agents don't really want to go through all the extra work to negotiate a backup agreement if they think the first agreement is strong. But think about this for a minute. What is the best way to keep the buyer number one acting and doing the things that they need to do in order to move to closing? What is the best single way to make that happen? Well, the best single way to make that happen is for the buyer number one to know that if something goes wrong with their contract, that you already have buyer number two in place. I want you to think about that for a second. If you, as a listener, were in first position to buy a home and you were notified by the listing broker, by the listing agent, that they had a backup agreement in place already. Now, it doesn't mean that they can move your contract out of first position and put the buyer number two in first position. As long as you, as buyer number one, continue to honor and follow the terms and conditions of the agreement, then you're going to be able to close on that sale. But let's just say you're buyer number one and you think you're going to ask for $5,000 worth of closing cost allowance in lieu of repairs as the result of an inspection. And 2 days before that, or a day before that, you learn from the listing agent that there is a backup agreement in place. As buyer number one, you might be likely to change, to lessen, or to eliminate what you might be asking for. So my suggestion is, if you have the opportunity to put a backup offer in place, a backup agreement in place, then that's what you do. If you are a home seller and you're wondering really how that works, well, if you get another offer and your agent presents an offer to you after you go under contract, then you would take that full agreement, you would negotiate to terms that were acceptable to you and were acceptable to the buyer, and then you would put a backup contingency exhibit. And it would state, for that buyer who was in buyer number two, that contract, it would state that it was in the second position behind the primary contract, and if this primary contract did not close on or before this date, then buyer number two could come automatically into first place. Now, I will tell you that the standard exhibit in the state of Georgia gives buyer number two the opportunity to terminate that contract at any time and to walk away. And so just because you have a contract with buyer number two does not mean they're going to be there and go all the way through to closing. So you have to make a decision, and I hate to use a horse racing analogy, but you have to make a decision. Does it make sense to get off of this horse and get on to another one? Does it make sense to stay on the horse you're already on? But I will tell you, Lawrence in Doraville, that in my opinion, it always makes sense to consider a backup agreement. And if you can fully negotiate one and have it in place, and then you give your agent permission to disclose to buyer number one that there is a backup agreement in place, I think that is a very, very, very powerful thing to do and a smart thing to do. Might seem like it's a little bit manipulative, but it's your house and you're selling your house, and you provided us what you want to do. You have the right to try to secure the best terms you possibly can.